that came out today from the Times of Israel that really last minute came to fruition. I have to say for the first time I actually took notes and I put it on my phone. I wasn't able to print it, so I apologize. But either way, there's so much history within Rabbi Raphael. The first time that I ever encountered him was, I must have been 12, 13 years old. My father bought, I think, a package deal of kameot from him for the entire family. For my mother, for my father, all my brothers, and so on. So I went into his house. This is way before I married his granddaughter. And I went into the basement, and I saw jars of different types of earth, jars of different types of spices, and so on. So I was wondering, then I saw the Yudke Vavke, the Lamnatseach, pictures of rabbis in a steep basement where many of us have been to, and I'm wondering, who is this old spooky or style rabbi? And okay, so he gave us the Kmeot, and that was that. And of course his Berachot. I went to a few times to him, the rest was history. And of course, heard wonderful stories. Fast forward a few years later, I ended up marrying his granddaughter. And ironically, they moved out. My mother-in-law moved to Lakewood, and of course I brought the granddaughter back to Toronto, where the family was originally from. There's it's very interesting. When I was dating my wife, and I didn't mention this, he warned me not to date her late at night. You know, aside from his strictness and his seriousness of Torah, but he also knew what was going on. And he says, don't be like the other ones coming at 2 a.m. If you come this late, it's going to be bad news for you. So, and I knew bad news from him is quite dangerous. I'll turn into a frog or something like that. But all kidding aside, he also still was in tune. He may not have knew what social media was, but certainly he knew what was going on out there. And of course, I kept to his words. And his history is very fascinating, truly fascinating. I would compare him to the Chachamim of Morocco, where he was started off from Aitatab. Aitatab is literally a village in the area of Beni Mellel. It's a few miles away from Fez. And he later moved to the city of Seli with his wife. From Seli to Tangiers, as the Tangerian Spanish community asked him to become a shochet there from the Bedin of Rabbi Mordechai Kawa and many great rabbanim there. And later from Tangiers, the Toronto Sephardic community asked him to come from Tangiers to Toronto. Fast forward, he came to Toronto in 1961, and foreign, like Rabbi Isaac said, and his teachers were well-known rabbanim, such as Rabbi Machluf Abuchasera, and many great dayanim. He had his certificates from Tangiers, his rabbinical ones from Tangiers, from Rabat, from Saleh, from Aitatab. See, everywhere he was going for, he was getting endorsed, as if he needed to get endorsed. He really didn't. But he wanted to become accepted. So, and it's very interesting. As I was recently digging through a lot of his books and letters, which my mother-in-law gave me permission to, it's interesting. As I got to dig into his life, he, to me personally, became more and more special, more and more unique. His writings, I mean, I saw the other day a luach, a calendar, a 50-year calendar for learning. Nobody makes that today. A 50-year calendar in writing. And I didn't publish that in the article. So his mindset was from a different world. His writing skills, he was more like into calligraphy, into his writings, even his own signature, as I mentioned in the article. And literally a rabbi from back then. And many of his signatures, he writes Sefer Tav or Sfaradi Tahor, and sometimes not. Very interesting in his writings and who he was. I just want to move forward, and again, there's so many things. Was that there was a story of a woman who once came to him and who had cancer. And she came and for berachot, and he said everything will be okay. Long story short, the son went to him and asked also for berachot for his mother. And he said, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. Just make sure your mother drinks milk blended with copper daily. And say certain style of tehillim, based on a certain methodology, and everything will be okay. And this boy went to him a few times, and he says, "Stop coming to me. You don't have to come to me anymore. She's going to be fine." And by her taking this milk and this chemo, and by her taking this milk and drinking this copper, it'll avoid chemo and everything will be okay. And that person's my mother. So it even affected home. So in other words, he affected many people. Every time I was there, people are always coming to his doorstep. You don't have people like that today. You don't have people that you would come to give berachot, and it's just honestly phenomenal to see that. As we're praying our Arvit, I got an email, and I'm going to read it very, very briefly from a lady. I don't even know if she's here or not, but her name's Temi Grafstein. I don't know if she's here or not. Either way, she emailed me, Rabbi Raphael Ohayon, in gratitude. And again, I'll be very short. She says very, very briefly here. There's a bunch of paragraphs, but I'll just read one. And this is ironic at the same time tonight. When my father, Yaakov Moshe Grafstein, was in the hospital recovering from a stroke that left him unable to swallow for a month and a half, Rabbi Ohayon gave him 3 items: a bowl, a feather, and a bottle of wine. In the bowl he had drawn Kabbalistic patterns and phrases. He threw words he wrote words on a piece of paper and threw it in the bowl, and gave him instructions that on Rosh Chodesh between Mincha and Arvit, again, very detailed, job description here, not job description, description, to softly read out loud with kavanah, a specific tehillim. Then pour the wine into the bowl until the ink dissolved, and then use the feather to touch the wine, and then eventually touch the neck. And lo and behold, it healed him. These are Ashkenazim who are a little one step removed from Kabbalistic approaches that obviously he influenced. And she ends off, and I'll just move forward. Rabbi Raphael Ohayon helped everyone in my family. This is very interesting what she says here. The actual instances and ceremonies could fill a book, but I do not have permission from my siblings to describe in detail how Rabbi Raphael Ohayon turned their destiny and my entire family's destiny and helped them survive and thrive. So he's not only given for berachot, he's not only helped people survive according to many people, but he's influenced and so on. I think that one of the greatest things, aside from his learning and his hafmadah and his dedication to Torah, was his struggle when he came to Toronto. And his wife, Simi, she lived to 120 years, always says the struggle financially, struggle emotionally that they came through, and he fought it unequivocally. So that's also something to think about constantly. And he raised, I mentioned in the article, he left over 100 descendants, over 50 grandchildren, over 40 to 50 great-grandchildren, Blianara. So he obviously left a lot of descendants. To end off, I just want to say that when I was there for the last few hours that he passed away. I probably left at 1 in the morning. He passed away at 4 in the morning. 2 days later, I went to Israel. 3 days later, I went to Israel. 2 days later, he was buried in Eretz Israel. So I was with a friend there in Har Zetim, looking for his kever, just a few days fresh. And I'm looking around, and I see Har Zetim. It's turning into, it's by Mincha time, so it's turning dark. I'm there with my friend, literally alone. Literally from miles away, I could see nobody. I would say that I could see the Ben Ish Chai's kever, Baba Meir's kever, and I couldn't find Rabbi Raphael. I couldn't find my wife's grandfather's kever. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, and I looked to my left, to my right, and I couldn't find his kever. All of a sudden, an Arab popped out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere, and he said, "Are you looking for Raphael?" They don't know how to pronounce. The Arabs don't know how to pronounce it with the fe. They pronounce it with a bet. And I'm like, "Yes." And he said, "Rabbi," and I said, "Yes." And he showed me where it was, and that was just very ironic because I couldn't find that important. I was agitated. I'm like, I'm just going to leave. And he showed me where it was. He said Tehillim, and we left. I have to say that his influence may have not been as strong technically with the community. I would say, in my opinion, I'll get to that in a minute. More with his family, more with his friends, and more with the people who constantly came to his doorstep. The people who he constantly loved and constantly blessed in our community. There's people here that I could say their names, always constantly blessed them. From Yehudah Azoulay to Danny Soberano to many, many people, constantly off the tip of his tongue, will be blessing them. And this is, he had deep appreciation, and not just a simple beracha. Berachot that he would give deep kavanah that barely exists today. And I just want to end off that when he came to the community in Toronto, as Rabbi Isaac said, he literally came from a very extreme. He came from literally an extreme way of life, from Aitatab, from the old world, and not from Tangiers or not from Casablanca, not from a modern community, from a really old school mentality that you wouldn't get to Toronto. So when he came to Toronto, it was very conflicted, and that's why necessarily when he came to the synagogues here, he didn't necessarily succeed to a certain point. He did, and at the same time he didn't, because you couldn't blame the man. At the end of the day, everything was one way or the highway, and if it didn't go his way, which was the way of Torah, then that's that. So that's why but anyhow, he left a big impact. I have to tell you the amount of writings that he did, and I'll end off as this. People know that I've written books. You cannot compare it to the amount of writings that he left off. I saw a little book, I counted over 140 pages of his own handwriting, of Pirushim on Torah, on the Zohar, and I saw in his Sidurim, he gave his own explanations, the Minhag of Rabat, the Minhag of Marrakesh. People don't live like this anymore. This is a different world. And you don't have anybody like this, unfortunately, in Toronto. I think probably the only one who could follow in his footsteps the most without saying is Rabbi Isaac. But anyhow, it's a deep shame not only for the family, but as well as for the legacy of Moroccan Jewry. And Bezrat Hashem, we take upon ourselves many, many things of Torah and dedicate ourselves to the notion and to the memory of Rabbi Raphael Ohayon. Thank you. Thank you.
What is no the other? What is that? Cauliflower, not chicken. Thank you. You like cauliflower?
I'm going on pause.